Last week I photographed fine wine at Benham Park, and honestly, it was one of the most impressive locations I've ever worked in. This video is a behind the scenes look at the shoot, how I approached the location, the gear I used, the lighting setup, what was difficult and what I would change next time. Benham Park is an incredible estate. The interiors are striking, the architecture feels grand without being too decorative. The whole place has the rare balance of scale, elegance and atmosphere. For a fine wine shoot, it was a brilliant setting. The house was built in the 1770s, commissioned by William Craven. The architect was Henry Holland, and the landscape was designed by Capability Brown. This was a high-end Georgian estate where the house and landscape were designed together as one vision. And you can feel that when you are inside. It does not just look expensive, it feels considered. Every room has presence. The paintings, the proportions, the light, the details, everything makes an impression. For this shoot, I was there with my colleague Christoph, who was assisting me and also recording some behind-the-scenes footage. My main camera for the day was Mamiya RZ67 with 110mm lens. That is my usual choice for this kind of work, especially when I want a more refined and film look. I was shooting on Portra 400 and I used about 5 rolls, so around 50 frames in total. That includes group shots, solo bottle shots and more spontaneous shots that I could experiment and play with the subjects. One thing that I did to add atmosphere was shooting through an empty glass. I placed it only on one side of the frame, either left or right, it was depending on where the main product was. I was often shooting wide open around f2.8 if I was using that glass to create a soft blur and some glare in the foreground that gives the image a softer and slightly more layered feel. For lighting, this shoot was interesting because I used a much simpler setup than usually. At first, we consider using more lights. Normally I use 2 constant lights, one overhead and one through a softbox, but in this case we decided to keep more of the natural light from the space and use mainly one spotlight to shape and direct attention onto the bottles. And I think it worked very well. So the idea was quite simple. We wanted to make room stay natural, let the architecture breathe, and then use of that spotlight to lift the product and the labels so they stand out even more without making the whole image feel overlit or artificial. That was very important because with a location like this, it would be very easy to overdo it and lose the atmosphere of the place. We just finished first set. How it went? I really like them. I think they're going to look great. It's 12. There, Christoph set up another place, another set, which I think looks great. The spotlight itself was useful because it allowed us to control where the light was falling and shape it quite precisely. But in practice, it wasn't the easiest tool to use. Changing plates and adjusted it took time and it got hot very quickly, so it slowed things down more than I expected. Still, it was worth it because it gives us a much more focused and natural results. One of the biggest challenges of the shoot was composition. As beautiful as the space was, it was actually quite overwhelming at first. When you are shooting a relatively small product in a very grand interior, it becomes tricky to find a frame that does justice to both the product and the room. You want the architecture to be visible because that is a part of the story, but at the same time the bottle still needs to feel important. If the room dominates too much, the product gets lost, and if you frame it too tightly, you lose what makes the location special. In the end, the spotlight helped to solve the problem. By highlighting the labels and the bottles directly, I could keep more of the room in the frame and still make the product stand out. And that also affected my aperture choices. Sometimes I wanted the background to fall away more, especially for softer, more intimate shots, but for many of the final images, I actually wanted more depth so the viewer could appreciate the architecture behind the bottle. So instead of staying wide open, I often used much higher apertures, sometimes even going up to f32 on the Mamiya. That meant longer exposures, tripod work and a slower pace, but it allowed me to keep both the product and more of the room in focus. And like in this example, I shot on f2.8 to highlight only the bottle, and then I shoot the same frame, and I think it was maybe f.7, something around that. And you can see the difference, like how much you can appreciate the room architecture and composition compared to the first one. That was important for this particular shot because the location was not just a background, it was a part of the image. I used as well a digital camera during the day, but it was mostly to test framing, check exposure, and get the rough sense of how the final image might look like before shooting on film. That made the process a bit more efficient, especially when working with long exposures and fine adjustments. Even though we only had 3 main product combinations, the shot still took the whole day. That's because once you start building out hero shots, group shots, solo shots, and more stylized variations, the time disappears very quickly. I also try to include some more lifestyle-driven images with the person in frame, just to bring a different mood into the set, but we did not have enough time to develop that side as much as I wanted. That is definitely something I would push farther next time. And that brings me to what I would change. First, now that I know the space, I would move much faster on the first visit. Part of the challenge is simply understanding the room, the lights, and how the product sits within the environment. Second, I would focus on nailing the main heroes shots as early as possible, then use the remaining time for more artistic images, model shots, and wider storytelling moments. Third, I think a shot like this would really benefit from a larger team. Ideally, I would have an assistant, a prop stylist, and possibly 1 or 2 models already prepared. That would make a huge difference. When you are adjusting lights, moving bottles, styling the set, and shooting at the same time, your attention gets split. With more support on the set, I could focus more on photography itself and try to push images way farther. Before the shoot, I also prepared a Pinterest board with visual references, and that helped a lot. It meant that even before arriving, I already had a sense of the mood, framing, and atmosphere I wanted to achieve. I did not want to copy anything directly, but having that visual direction made it easier to make decisions on the day. The location was stunning. The spotlight setup gave us something different from what I usually do, and the final images feel natural while still being shaped and intentional. If you've never tried shooting medium format for product work, I really recommend it. For me, the Mamiya RZ67 gives a look that is difficult to replace. It lets me get closer to the bottle, control the composition carefully, and create images that feels more tactile and considered. I have as well a Pentax 6x7 and Mamiya RZ67. However, with Pentax 6x7, if you ever consider to buy it or you are in between Pentax and Mamiya and you are planning to shoot product shots, Mamiya RZ67 or RB67 is way better because you can get way closer to the subject compared to Pentax. Pentax is very good probably for fashion shoots when you are shooting models and you need more space, but with the product photo shoot, Mamiya RZ67 is my choice, my go-to. I hope this was useful, especially if you are interested in product photography, location shot, and using film in commercial work. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Have you seen my film?
Which one?
The Portra. Oh, that.